the camera?
No, we look at each other.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
just
Much better.
It's 6 o'clock. It's Tuesday night. It must be time for all things Brunswick. So we're here to do a great conversation as we do it week to week. I'm Bill Moore,
Mary Stillwell.
and our partner Dan hasn't been released from prison yet, but he will hopefully get him back another week or so. You know, the people tried to raise money for him, and it was a $2 bill. We've raised $1.72 so far, but we'll get there when we get a few more bottles collected and get him out here for next week.
Be nice.
I am nice. You see what I really wanted to say. Anyway,
And we're
Mary,
all-
why don't you introduce our guest?
I will. I just want to first say that we are also lacking Greta tonight. She's busy, but in the studio we have our tech, TK. Thank you for being here.
TK stands for Tech King, by the way.
Yeah. And I'm so pleased to have on the show tonight Kathleen Collins, who is the president of Southeastern Wind Coalition, Carly Lowen, who is program and outreach for that coalition, and we also have Ethan Beaulier, who is program assistant, educational and outreach. So I welcome you all. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
This has to be the hottest topic in this county right now.
Or in the southeastern area. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think New Hanover has a few questions, too.
Well, they do, but I think that the people in Brunswick County right now, especially along the coast, are wanting to know if we are going to get wind turbines in the ocean off our shores. So, Kathleen, can you tell us anything?
Well,
Catherine, I'm
yes,
sorry.
Catherine, you're good. You're good. I
I'm
respond to a
sorry.
lot of things.
Yeah,
I've
but
been told a lot of things myself
know
over the years.
better.
You're good, Mary. You're good. So I think you're likely referring to, we had two wind energy areas off the coast of southern North Carolina. There was Wilmington East and Wilmington West.
Right.
The Wilmington East wind energy area was leased, and that is the lease that was purchased by, it was kind of split in half, so purchased by Duke Energy Renewables and Total Energies. The Wilmington West wind energy area, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management declined to move forward with that area. There were a number of complications with it, one of which was the visual impact. I cannot see a world in which that wind energy area would be leased. The Bureau is actually going to be, what they did a few years ago for the first time was actually came up with a 5-year leasing plan so that states would be able to prepare, so that companies would know when and where these leases were going to be taking place. They are going to do that again, and again, so we should have a much better idea of what the Bureau is looking at.
For
the
our
next 5
listeners,
years.
could you clarify where East and West is in the water, or at least what's near?
Yeah, I mean, Wilmington, East and West, they're both off the coast of, well, Carly, you can probably
Yeah.
describe a little bit better.
So both off the coast of Bald Head Island. Wilmington West was a little bit closer to shore. That's the one that's out of the picture. Wilmington East at its closest point is exactly 20 statute miles from the tip of Bald Head Island.
Okay. Because nautical miles are different than land
Yes,
miles,
so
right?
20
Yeah.
20
Okay.
statute miles is about 17 nautical miles.
Okay. So actually, it's Wilmington, but it's off Bald Head.
Yep, the Carolina Long Bay area.
All right. So people, one of the questions in this area are people from Bald Head asking, can they see them from the island?
So early last year, Southeastern Wind Coalition had a visual impact study commissioned. It was conducted through Unisys, which is a company based out of the UK that does all kinds of visual impact studies, both for renewables and for oil and gas industry. But we commissioned those visualizations of what Wilmington, or what the Carolina Long Bay project would look like, with the exact border of the project and the shape of the lease and all of those kinds of things. And when you look at the visualizations, which we're happy to share you so viewers can look online, you can view them from your computer at home if you'd like to. But if you have really good vision, you might be able to see the tip of a turbine on a perfectly clear day when there's no wind, there's no haze, there's no moisture in the air. But under average conditions, and for somebody who's sitting on the beach enjoying their day, you're not going to have any visual impact. No.
Okay. Well, that answers that. Now, this project is, I am told, You are the president of this coalition, which involves 11 states. Am I right?
That is correct, yes.
And are these all coastal states?
They are not. We've
Okay.
got a number of inland states, Kentucky, Arkansas. So,
Okay.
but yes, for coastal states, our coalition does outreach and education to Virginia, down to Florida, and over to Louisiana.
So I'm with the understanding that the turbines are going to kind of splatter down the coast. Is that correct, or am I misinformed?
Right now, so thinking about larger densities of turbines, that will be the case up in the Northeast. There are a number of wind energy areas that have been leased in the Northeast states. Once you get down to about Virginia, Delaware, Virginia area, right now there is one wind energy area, a large area off the coast of Virginia. There's a 2,600 megawatt project that is under development by the regulated utility, Dominion Energy Virginia. That is expected to be actually the country's largest offshore wind project.
Really?
Yes, and should be operational in 2026.
Wow.
So a fairly quick timeline. And then beyond that, we've got the Kitty Hawk wind energy area, which is near the northern portion of the North Carolina coast, and then the Wilmington area. So no, we don't have a lot of density. There's not a lot of density right now, and then nothing further south of that.
Okay.
We are talking about wind energy in the Gulf of Mexico, really off the coast of Louisiana. That would be western, kind of the western portion of Louisiana. There is one area that's expected to be leased later this year, and then a couple of areas off the coast of Texas. But that's all dependent on commercial interest.
Sure.
And right now, there's nothing south of the area of the Wilmington East or the Carolina Long Bay area.
Okay. What are some of the questions that you've heard, Bill?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that to me. We have some fun now.
Yes.
First of all, let me start out by saying I'm not anti-alternative energy, but I'm very much energy that works.
Absolutely.
I used to live in the Northeast, and I was kind of watching what happened in New Bern when they were putting in, when they attempted to, and then they ran, for want of a better term, when there certain questions were asked. So that may not be the right way to start, but that's where I'm coming from.
Is this the land-based
It was
wind
land-based.
projects?
It was a land-based one,
Yep.
and
We're
part of
familiar
it dealt
those.
with the Air Force, the
Yep.
Navy flying over top. I was up there for all of that.
Yes.
My first question comes from life expectancy. They're not going to last forever, and I would assume it's a 10 to 20 year maybe life expectancy on a wind turbine.
25 to 30.
Okay, I'll give you. We'll meet at 15 to 20 because nothing is going to last that long. I get I get all these wonderful warranties on everything I own, and nothing lasts what they tell me. So I'll give you 15 to 20. All right, let's assume
I'll
for a
take
minute.
it. I'll take
Let's
it.
just take. Let's take 20 to be fair. Okay.
Sounds good.
What happens at the end of 20 years?
At the end of 20 years, a wind turbine, like anything at the end of its useful life, is going to be, well, there's a couple of options. So the most likely option is that area is already, you've already got electrical infrastructure in that area, right? We think about repowering or extending the life of a nuclear plant. You can do a very similar thing with a wind turbine. So you've already got the electrical infrastructure, you've already got the permits. Oftentimes what happens, what we've seen with some of the much older projects, is they'll actually put a newer generator because the technology is constantly evolving. We can use larger generators and create more power with the exact same footprint. And so you'll see a newer generator placed on top of an existing tower, sometimes requires a new tower, and that spot, that turbine will continue to
One can
produce
assume
electricity.
After 20 years,
and then
there'll be a more modern version to go in there. But the plan is you're not looking to leave it and walk away from the spot in 20 years.
Oh, no. So first of all, the recyclability of a turbine is incredible. It's also, you're talking about metal materials that are worth a lot of money. So the salvage value of a turbine is often worth the same price as it costs in order to salvage it.
And what's
so
the
a
salvage
steel
value of the wind the arms, for want of a better term.
The blades. So the salvage value of the blades is absolutely the lowest currently. So the tower is made of steel. It's 100% recyclable. The nacelle is also has a significant number of recyclable components in it. The blades are currently a composite, and that is one argument that we'll hear frequently, like, well, you have to landfill the blades. The current blades do need to be landfilled, but it's important to remember it's an inert substance. It's not like landfilling coal ash or something toxic.
Or nuclear waste.
Or nuclear waste, yes, exactly. But it does require, yes, it requires space. It's not ideal, but when you look at the options for electrical generation, it certainly is among the best. The other piece to remember is that, or to think through, is that these manufacturers are looking at how can we reduce our overall footprint, our environmental footprint. And so every single major manufacturer is currently working on recyclable blades. And so
I've heard one group has actually come up with something that they're trying to test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is actually recyclable.
Yes. So there are existing recyclable blades on the market. They currently come at a cost premium, but the expectation is that as those make it to scale, that those recyclable blades will become the only blades that are used. And you can repurpose blades. We've seen, I've talked with researchers who are repurposing them for utility poles. It's a very sturdy piece of carbon composite. Utility poles, bridges, playgrounds. So in Europe, I've seen a couple of playgrounds made from blades. But yes, right now, many of the old blades do need to be landfilled.
Okay.
Great.
Shall I keep going, or you want to keep going?
I go ahead. I know you have another question, so I'll let you
Next question, and I don't know the truth behind this, but I hear it. There's a bunch of people out there singing that these turbines are hurting the whales and causing signals to cause them to beach, and I don't know if that's true or not, but I know it's out there.
That's a fantastic question, and it's definitely a current event that's making headlines, so definitely worth talking about. So just for those of you who aren't up to date with what's going on in the Northeast, in the New York Bight area off the coast of New York and New Jersey, there have been a number of sperm whales and humpback whales that have washed up.
Right.
And so there's a number of groups that have come out and said that offshore wind surveying, construction operation needs to halt until they can figure out what's going on. So we've looked into this, and we've partnered with some other organizations who have a little bit more of a footprint in the Northeast to figure out what's going on. And it's really important to remember that the only activity going on off the coast of New York Bight is a few survey vessels that make up less than 1% of the traffic. And all these whales that have washed up have either been ship strikes or fishing gear entanglement, which we know obviously offshore wind is not causing fishing gear entanglement. Offshore wind industry vessels are required to report all ship strikes. So they went back and checked with all those survey companies and developers. No ship strikes have been reported. So that's good news so far. But really the big thing to remember is that offshore wind vessels are such a tiny, it is such a highly trafficked area, and it's such a tiny portion of the traffic up there. The other important thing to remember, humpback whales were not doing great for a long time, but their population numbers have increased exponentially. And unfortunately, when you have more whales, you're going to see more mortalities, unfortunately. And sperm whales have had a little bit of a weird, unusual mortality event going on for a number of years. And so this isn't the first year that we've seen this happening. It's been going on for quite a while. So they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on there. But we did have an official statement come out from the EPA and NOAA, the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, that said that there's no evidence linking offshore wind to these issues. But the Dominion Energy, the regulated utility in Virginia that is constructing the Coastal Virginia offshore wind project, also came out and they said that in light of these incidents and the sensitivities around whales, they are taking all extra steps possible to avoid any interaction with whales. And I think it's worth noting, I've been out to see the Seabow, the pilot turbines. They have 2 turbines in the water right now. I've been out to see them twice. And it was really cool to go out and see them in person because they had somebody from Dominion there to talk about what the installation process is like. And fun fact, they can install a foundation in 5 hours, which I think is kind of mind-blowing.
That's fast.
But if they see a whale, they're in the area, in the proximity, they halt all operations. They're extremely limited. I think they can only construct like something like 4 or 5 months of the year because of whale migratory habitat. It's also worth noting that right before the Wilmington East or Carolina Long Bay project. I know we're using that term interchangeably. They mean the same thing. But before that Carolina Long Bay project was leased, it was trimmed down a little bit to exclude North Atlantic right whale habitat. So whale sensitivities have definitely been taken into account throughout the leasing process. And when they go through the surveying process, there are people on board who they're called protected species observers. Their job is just to look for whales, look for turtles, look for any type of endangered species. And if they see something in the area, then they take all necessary steps to avoid any interaction.
There's no action going on right now that would say, for example, that all sea life is being affected by just something sticking in the water.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Ethan, you do some research. Talk to us about birds. People are concerned about birds flying into these turbines.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with offshore wind, when you have projects that are, 20, 27 miles out, the benefit of that is that, there's not a whole lot of, birds that are making it that far out. Of course, there are some species that do make it out that far, but they are significantly reduced in number, or the total species very reduced in number by the time they get out there. Additionally, there's always going to be the risk of we call it collisions with the blades. There are a variety of technologies that do exist to either warn the birds or to track the number of species that are impacted, as well as simply these projects are specifically least they're located in areas where migratory patterns aren't going to impact. The projects aren't going to impact the migratory patterns, because nobody wants to place a project in an unusable location. Nobody wants to put a project where it's going to have such a significant impact on wildlife.
Great.
And I think too, I was just going to say, with the birds, context is always very important, because we can all visualize it's the same with whales, right? When we see, we can very easily think about, and it's awful to think about, right? Something, an animal dying because of human activity.
Sure.
Birds, wind turbines, right now, wind turbines kill about 500,000 birds a year. That might sound like a lot. Windows, 20 million a year. Cats, house cats are actually the worst offender for birds, and they kill, I believe, Carly probably knows better than I do. What is it, like 100 million?
It's something crazy like that.
Birds per year. So
Yeah.
keep your cats inside. But don't worry about the wind turbines.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that the two turbines for the Coastal Virginia offshore wind project have been there for 2 years. They have really cool technology that allows the survey companies to view the turbines at all times. They've had 0 strikes in the 2 years that they've been
Wow.
out there. And what I've been told is that birds are very, very smart, and they will learn their environment. They'll learn how to navigate, and they'll learn their environment. And like those technologies that Ethan mentioned, where they can geolocate birds when they know there's a migratory pathway coming through, they can pause the use of turbines. There's the technologies to deter them away. But birds are pretty smart. They make it out there for a reason. They know where they're going.
We are in an area where the fishing industry is actually people's livelihood.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the tourist season is very important, and also for charter boats. Okay, do these turbines would they have any impact on either of these?
So the exciting part about offshore wind is that they introduce a hardened structure that hosts a whole ecosystem of reef and of shellfish and fish and all kinds of fun things that wouldn't be there otherwise. The ecosystem down here in the southern part of the state is unique because we do have a lot of that hardened structure already, and that's what fishermen flock to. So to have those artificial reefs available is really exciting. But in terms of impacts to fishermen, a lot of the questions and concerns I hear are along the lines of, what is the construction phase going to look like? Are we going to be able to navigate and use those areas once the wind farms are constructed? And the answer is yes. There will be small exclusion zones around individual turbines when they install them. Again, it only takes a couple hours to to do that. And the Coast Guard has publicly stated that they are not going to restrict unless there is some type of emergency that happens or some type of unusual circumstance. There's no restriction to access, so you could go and tether up to a turbine and fish right there and take advantage of that artificial reef. And up in Rhode Island, there are 5 turbines in the water that have been there for about 7 years, and the University of Rhode Island conducted a fisheries monitoring study over those 7 years, and they found that not only have the number of species and the population of those species has increased over the past 7 years since the turbines have been there, but they can also tell that those fish are eating what's on the turbines. So it's kind of creating its own little ecosystem, which is very cool.
That's great.
And that's been in conjunction with additional fishing at those turbines.
Yeah.
So not only are the populations increasing, but they are increasing even with additional fishing. There are new charter companies that have arisen in Rhode Island because of those wind farms. In the summertime, they offer tours to go see them every day. I have been on them. They're actually a lot of fun.
We have the same
If
thing
you don't
in
get
Maine.
sick.
They have tours where they take them to see the wind farms. So
Yep.
I wondered about that.
I think another thing to mention
go
there is
ahead.
that
That's okay.
these farms are specifically designed to be easily navigatable,
Yep.
not only for operation and maintenance, but because they know that fishermen are going to frequent some of these areas, commercial or recreational. So it's something that's built into the construction process from the very beginning. They engage with the stakeholders who are going to regularly be using this so that they can maintain that access.
Yeah, and the
Great.
fish.
Curiosity, what's the distance between the blade and the water as it swings by?
Something like let me do some mental math. So turbines from the base of the water to the blade are about
650 feet or so.
closer to 800 feet.
Oh, good.
With the new ones.
Yeah, and then the blades, you've probably got about 200 or 300 feet between.
I was going to say, I've calculated before. It's about 150 to
Yeah.
200
Oh,
feet.
so there's no problem with something going underneath.
No,
yeah,
no.
no.
You're not going to reach up to the top of the ship.
No haircuts.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
question one. That
No,
does
They are
solve one issue.
huge.
They are, and go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I think a common misconception is that they like spin super, 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 super fast, and they're gonna blow you away.
Oh, no, they don't.
No, they spin at about 8 RPMs per minute, and it's very peaceful. When I went out to see the sea bow turbines, we actually had to cut the boat engine to be able to even hear anything. And all you hear is a little whoosh, whoosh when it
Yep.
goes by. It's very quiet and very peaceful, but you're not getting blown away, and it's not creating any ripple effect in the water.
Well, that's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the
Come
things
back
I was
another
going to
time.
say about fishing. Oh, see, look, you guys wanted to talk. Sorry, look, you brought 3 talkers
No,
here.
no, please talk. We want.
Look,
want-
you guys can talk. We'll come back and answer.
All right, we'll
Wrap the
see you
show
all
up.
later. Thank you for having us. No, but it is been, you ask about fishing, and I think what's been really interesting in North Carolina is that we have certainly heard more concerns from the charter fishermen in North Carolina than we've heard in any other state
Right.
we work in, and it has been interesting because in Rhode Island, in Virginia, those charter fishing operations are so in favor of offshore wind for all the reasons we mentioned, right? It's a hardened structure. There is more fishing to be had. It brings tourists to go offshore. And so it has been, I would say North Carolina is a little bit of an anomaly there in that concern. Most of the time when we hear fishing concerns, it's commercial fishing. And that is certainly the case, the lobstermen up in the Northeast and the very large trawling boats that they've got about a mile wide net. That requires some very specific patterns through the
Yes.
waters that
Yes.
they've been trawling for 100 plus years. Their families. That's where you'll usually hear more concerns. It's not generally with smaller charter boats. I mean, those again, these are very easily navigable.
Do you think that the folks in this area that do that for a living or do charters are not really aware of the facts, and that is why they're so opposed to them? Because everything that you've stated tells me that there's really not an issue.
So I think that where a lot of that concern comes from is interactions with fishermen in the North Sea off the coast of the UK. And the unfortunate situation there is that when offshore wind was introduced specifically off the coast of Europe, they did not have the federal government regulatory process like we have. They did not have the stakeholder engagement process like we have. Wind turbines just kind of started popping up left and right. And then next thing you knew, construction was happening, and it was in an economically significant commercial fishing ground, where we're very fortunate here, even though it takes a long time for these projects to get going and a long time from site identification to actual construction and then even longer to operation. It's because there's all those checks and balances along the way to make sure an environmental impact statement is done, to make sure there's a plan for construction and decommissioning, to make sure that there's time for stakeholder engagement, specifically with fishermen, and why we do events like we're hosting this afternoon, so that there's an opportunity for those folks. Because, I mean, before we started doing a lot of community engagement in Brunswick County specifically, we didn't know a lot of those concerns because, again, it's so different than what we hear in the Northeast. Right. So it's definitely.
Tell us about that event, please.
Oh, yes.
Now that you've mentioned
Absolutely. So this afternoon at the Brunswick County Community College from 4 to 7 p.m., NC Towers, which is the North Carolina Task Force for Offshore Wind Economic Resource Strategy, is hosting an open house. So this is an open house for offshore wind. We're going to have a number of subject matter experts. So there will be some experts on economic development like ourselves, some experts on wildlife and environmental issues, experts on the projects themselves. Will have the developers there. So there'll be a little bit of everybody. So it'll be a very conversational, dialogue-driven format where you can go around and ask questions and give feedback. And the main goal of this event is to kind of figure out what we don't know that the community is asking.
And military, we'll have some.
Military,
and
Coast Guard as well. And then we will have presentations, fisheries as well. Yeah. And then we will have presentations at 4:30, 5:30, 6:30.
Well, one of the.
Break.
Oh.
I think so.
I think we better break. I've been told I need to break. So we're going to take. We're going to pay some bills. Okay. So we'll be back.
My favorite part.
Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, located at 8210 River Road, Southport, is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with the Tackle Box open Monday through Saturday, 7 to 6. Marine Service Pro is a full Suzuki and Tohatsu dealership. They deal in pre-owned boats, full service and repair, with certified technicians in all engines, and fiberglass specialists. The Tackle Box offers fresh, local seafood, live bait, a tackle shop, and fish packing and shipping. They also offer a full-service U-Haul dealership. Spend time with Leon or Jenny for one-stop shopping at Marine Service Pro and the Tackle Box Seafood, 8210 River Road, Southport.
It seems like every other store is now selling CBD in some form or another. But did you know that Wilmington has just one local CBD company? I'm talking about Carolina Pure. Family owned and operated, they are Wilmington's first and only CBD company that makes quality hemp products right here in town, including tinctures, topicals, and pet products. Their hemp is sourced from local farmers and they support area musicians and nonprofits. Check us out at carolinapureshop.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you are a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
This show is also sponsored by Dr. Tony Maglione. Dr. Tony is a cardiologist practicing in Wilmington. He accepts Medicare patients, and his office is located across the street from New Hanover Regional Medical Center at 2032 17th Street. The office number is 202-1071. Dr. Tony is an author whose last book is Rules for Conservative Patriots, and it can be purchased on Amazon. His website is
What a great place we all
www.drtonymag.com.
call home. From colorful sunsets to panoramic coastal views. The best attractions are its people, a community of friends and family. J.K. Summers, attorney at law, recognizes this fact and is proud of his work to protect their rights. Put your trust in him to prepare wills and trusts, real estate transactions, contract and LLC creations, and criminal, traffic, and civil matters. Visit oakislandlaw.com or call 910-253-5572. J.K. Summers, attorney at law. Welcome back, folks, to All Things Brunswick. Tonight we have with us Catherine Collins, who is the president of the Southeastern Wind Coalition, Carly Lohan, who is program and outreach, and we have with both of them, and it is a pleasure, a Bollier, Ethan Bollier, who also does program and education and outreach. To give you a little background, Catherine has been president of this coalition since 2015. This organization was formed in 2012. It includes 11 states. She is a Duke graduate. She was appointed by the governor to serve on the board of Advanced Energy. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Carly is a Wilmington resident, so we can see her anytime we wish. Mm-hmm. She you graduated from Wilmington,
yes,
right?
That's correct.
UNC?
Yep.
And she was afraid she was going to have to move away, but then she landed this job a year ago and was able to stay in this great area. And Ethan has been with the organization for about 7 months. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Great. Welcome, all of you again. To tell our listeners, if you would please, why it is so important that we turn to alternative energy in this fashion.
I'm happy to start. Well, I'll start with, I frequently talk about a diversified grid. It is like any portfolio. You cannot run it on one resource alone. Mm-hmm. So we need diversification. It is, I have so many things I want to say about this, but
You have a half hour.
fabulous.
We'll be
Get
back.
ready. All right, put
We'll
your
be back.
seatbelts on. No, I'll give one salient example, and then I'll turn it to my teammates because, as we all know, I can talk too long. You know, the blackouts that North Carolina experienced on Christmas Eve. I'm not sure how much of that has been talked. You know, how much of that has been talked about in the community, and if the
We
coast
didn't have
was
it
affected.
here.
Yeah,
No.
and I didn't in the Triangle either. I believe, was it mostly in the? I think a lot of it was in the Charlotte area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was in the western part. It was close to the Virginia border and up into West Virginia.
So those blackouts came as a result because of not all of the generating sources were performing as expected. There were a number of issues with 2 natural gas plants and a coal plant, all because it was too cold. You know, they were downrated because of the temperatures outside. So, you know, the other really interesting thing that was happening during the storm, there was a lot of wind. A whole lot of wind, and a lot of it was offshore. So, Bill, I know you like to poke fun at maybe the capacity factors or how much wind is blowing, but a 1,600 megawatt wind farm, that is smaller or about the size of what we would see with a fully developed Carolina Long Bay. A 1,600 megawatt farm would have prevented the blackouts. The capacity factor.
Following on that a second.
Yeah.
The 16 megawatt whatever that is.
Yeah.
Takes care of how many homes or how many areas?
Oh my goodness,
I asked you
I was
first.
gonna say Carly's gonna go. I'm so bad with the
wanna get around
homes
it.
data. So what I usually equate it to is a nuclear plant. A nuclear plant's about 1,000 megawatts. One nuclear plant. A new natural gas plant in the neighborhood of 500 to 600 megawatts. And so this is we're talking 1,600 megawatts. We were short in North Carolina. We were short a nuclear plant and a natural gas plant. This is a good chunk of power, and so we're talking about 110,000 acres developed offshore would have provided the diversification of resources to power the state through that really cold spell. And I think that's the really interesting thing about offshore wind is that it is often working when other things are not necessarily working. The utility, the North Carolina General Assembly, and others have committed to lowering the carbon footprint of our grid. That does mean more intermittent resources, solar, wind. The great thing about those things is that they actually work in tandem very well together. So again, you get back to that diversification. We can't rely on only solar, only natural gas, only, we're seeing the impacts of global energy markets right now. One of the diversification strategies for that is you bring in resources that do not have a fuel cost. The costs up front are higher, yes, absolutely. And we could talk about that, all day, and people could say, "Oh, they're so expensive." Yes, they are expensive up front. The fuel cost is zero. The wind costs nothing. Same thing with solar. So when we think about, okay, well, how do we make sure that our grid is, we love to talk about resiliency. One of the things that you do for resiliency is you add diversification. Our grid right now has no offshore wind on it. You add that profile and you can do so much benefit for the resiliency and the reliability of our grid. So that is one of many reasons. I'll let my colleagues share theirs, but that is one of many reasons. Can you tell I really like offshore wind?
Yes.
I like land-based wind too, but offshore has a special
Meet you
place in my
halfway on
heart.
that. I'll give you the offshore.
I'm so happy to have you here today.
Fair enough.
And to answer your question, Bill, and this number, it varies a little bit depending on where the estimate comes from, but according to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is a federal agency within the Department of the Interior that handles all the oil and gas and offshore energy leasing, they're saying that 1.3 gigawatts will power about 500,000 homes. So 1.6, a little bit more than that. So not too
That's a good
shabby.
answer.
Not too shabby.
Pretty good chunk of homes.
And to add on to Catherine's comments, and I know I asked you about this at lunch, Mary. I know that we are in an area down here on the coast where we care a lot about our marine ecosystems. We care a lot about sea turtles. We care a lot about whales. We care a lot about how our wetlands and all of those coastal environments work together. And I think that it's really important to mention that through our one of our campaigns called Offshore Wind for North Carolina, we work with a lot of nonprofits, including Sierra Club, Audubon Society, North Carolina Coastal Federation, to help provide a platform for organizations that typically wouldn't have the time or energy or bandwidth to work in offshore wind and give them the resources they need to make educated decisions and help them advocate for what they represent, whether that's conservation or birds or, all the above. But I think it's really important to mention that these organizations support renewable energies like offshore wind because climate change is something that they have identified as one of the biggest threats to those species. When it comes to whales, their migratory pathways are being interrupted because the water temperature is changing, and because when the water temperature changes, then their food moves, and when their food moves, they have to move. And then their food might not be near their calving grounds, and there's all kinds of there's such a trickle down butterfly effect that happens there. And I know that everybody kind of has their own opinion about climate change and what can be done to combat it. But right now, where we are at with the amount of carbon emissions that we have in our electricity grid, we're not on a sustainable pathway. And like Catherine had mentioned earlier, there is always going to be some type of negative impact or unintended consequence when it comes to infrastructure, especially energy. But it's kind of, I don't want to say taking the lesser of two evils. I'm going to say that because I don't have a better term. But it's one of those things where we have seen so much dedication in the offshore wind industry towards responsible siting, working with organizations, working with stakeholders, and that's something that we don't see in the coal industry or in the oil and gas industry. We see the offshore wind industry working so closely with stakeholders, and that's a really big deal.
Yep. Thank you. Do you have an opinion, Ethan?
I have a little bit of an opinion. I think absolutely, it's nice to, highlight the environmental benefits of offshore wind, and there are plenty. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy. I think also a very valid argument is these projects are economic boons to the local communities, right? So we've done research into hypothetical, a 2.8 gigawatt project of offshore wind, right? So Kitty Hawk is 3.5, and then we also have our Carolina Longbit project.
Right.
A 2.8 gigawatt project over its lifespan will produce 10,000 jobs during construction.
That's a good point.
Absolutely, right?
Yes.
You have an economic benefit of $4.6 billion. These are not small projects. This is money that's flooding communities that, oftentimes are struggling.
Yes.
This is a huge boon not only in tax revenue, but also for just jobs.
Now I'm going to stop you because now you get into territory we have some issues on. 10,000 jobs. How many of them are permanent?
I believe of that, about 100 jobs are permanent. That would be operations and management.
Just to clarify a little bit, 10,000 jobs per year over 3 years during construction. Those are not permanent. We're talking about 900 to 1,000 jobs are permanent over the lifespan of the project.
And that actually takes into consideration both the manufacturing as well as the permanent operations and maintenance jobs. So the 100 there's about 100 folks required for that side. Yes, who are going to be actually going offshore. And those jobs, the average salary for those jobs is over $110,000 a year. The average salary for those manufacturing jobs is over $60,000 a year, and those are permanent jobs. Yes, the construction jobs, over the course of 3 years. I mean, we're looking at the
like
Dominion
houses.
project.
Yeah.
Exactly, but the Dominion project, and the more certain pipeline you have, the more people know, like, okay, I can stay in this area. The Dominion Virginia project is going to be under construction for 3 years.
You mentioned economic boon to the towns for taxes. Where is that money coming from? Because you're not on town territory, you're not paying property taxes. So where is the local community getting an economic boom from that?
Food, lodging.
100 people. Remember we're talking 100 people?
Yeah.
Well, you're talking 1,000. 1,000 permanent, but when you think about 10,000 construction jobs,
I'm
then
not talking short term, I'm talking long term.
yeah. So long term, it's going to be the 800 to 1,000 jobs from additional manufacturing as well as operations and maintenance. In terms of county tax revenues, you're right; those are not as prevalent as what you see for land-based wind, right? Where we see land-based wind projects, I know your favorite.
Not my favorite.
They are, come on. They are the largest, in North Carolina right now, the largest taxpayer in Pasquotank and Perquimans counties by a factor of 3 is the Amazon Wind Farm US East. But for yeah, so for offshore wind, it comes in the form of substations, transmission infrastructure. All of those things become real property and is taxed by the county.
But again, I hear your numbers, but here's where I go a little bit off.
Yeah.
You got 1,000 jobs that we're saying are permanent.
Yes.
There's maybe 100 to 200 jobs in the local community. That manufacturing is not happening here. It's happening someplace else. So 800 jobs are somewhere else. talking about local community.
Yep. So the way that we performed this analysis assumed that a certain portion of that manufacturing was in the local community. And what we've got, you're thinking there about the electricians, you're thinking about concrete manufacturers, you're talking about in North Carolina, the state has done a good bit to recruit additional steel production, tower manufacturing. Hertford County produces steel plate. So I know that is not, it's a good bit far north of here. But Hertford County, the Nucor steel plant produces steel plate that is used for turbine towers. There's a manufacturer outside of Charlotte in Huntersville, North Carolina. They produce the fiber that is used to weave the blades, and there's actually a weaving plant outside of Huntersville where the material. I'm not using the exact right term. I'm using my hands here. You can all see me. The material for the blade material is actually woven in proprietary weaves for wind turbine blades. I mean, they ship this stuff all over the world, but that happens in North Carolina. Right. So there are a lot of
these
industries
jobs are within the state, but they're not necessarily local.
Right.
Well,
but may I say something? I look at it this way. In this area, okay, if you have lived here forever, all right, you are probably a fisherman. You are a construction worker.
And also about 700 years old.
And of course we have lawyers and doctors, et cetera, but this is a tourist community, and it is a fast-paced area as far as growing. It's booming. People are used to having construction jobs, jobs that don't last forever, and I personally think that they would look towards this as a plus, even if it were 10,000 people working for 3 years.
Well, that's a really exciting part about events like what we're hosting today that I talked about before the break in Brunswick County, because starting to establish those relationships with the state college and community college system is going to really be really important to figure out what workforce development is going to look like. And as we have a little bit more project certainty and we get further down the pipeline and we know when all the puzzle pieces are coming together, we can start to talk about, okay, we're going to need this many of this jobs, and this is how long the training takes, and this is when we need the workforce to be ready. So I know that Carteret Community College up on the Crystal Coast is thinking about that a lot already. So hopefully that's a conversation
So
we
you're
can
going to
initiate.
implement into the local college the things that need to be done with the turbines.
Well, I would say that's something that they're doing independently. They're
Right.
recognizing it as an economic development opportunity and a workforce
and that's what
opportunity.
they did in northern Maine, because the ones that are in Mars Hill, I know a couple of young men who went to school to climb and repair, and they're still there, and that's what they do.
And haven't come down after all these years. I'm really concerned.
they have bathrooms up there.
Either that or don't walk underneath.
You wouldn't catch me up there, but
Taking you off in a different direction. Are you done? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that, Quixote Community College is not the only one that is, looking towards offshore wind as, potentially developing these training programs. The Steps for Growth program, which was announced by Roy Cooper, I believe, last summer, is a $50 million program that's going towards developing exactly these types of programs. This is workforce development that's not just local, it's spread throughout North Carolina. Of course, the most immediate economic benefit is going to be in these coastal communities, but we have 55 plus supply chain manufacturing facilities across North Carolina that, one, supply either land-based wind right now, but also have the, have the potential to transition to serving offshore wind. So, again, it's a lot of this growth happens locally in the community, but the economic benefit is spread across North Carolina.
and that's important. Yes, you're right, Ethan.
The
It
other
is.
fun fact that I like to share is that there are 8,000 components in a wind turbine. And some of those are the tier 1 components. So those are the components you see, like the blades and the nacelle and the tower. Those are big and they have to be manufactured on the coast. So that's where some of that economic development comes from. But all of those other parts generally are small and can be transported across the state. And there's a huge concentration of manufacturing for those smaller components across the state, like Ethan was saying. There are companies that already work in land-based wind or have the
Right.
potential to work. So
Yep.
there's a really great opportunity for the economic development to go not to the coast, but to also those rural counties or
Don't you
inland
think
counties.
it depends on the area? Like now, where I'm from, okay, even 100 people coming in there and working would make a huge difference. Yes, Bill, you're right. It would make a huge difference. He's always talking about my 12 people.
That's okay. We like rural areas.
Yeah.
Rural
But
is called a state.
But
Some people don't
think
want to
it-
live near anyone
Yeah,
else.
Daniel Boone
My
wanted
dad
to.
is one of them.
Well, wife, they're 12 miles next to the neighbor. It's time to move. They're getting
Yep,
too close.
exactly.
But I think that it depends on the area. How many people and what what it does for that area. Just a thought, anyway.
I'm ready in a different direction now.
Okay,
Because
go
enough
ahead.
of this bleeding heart stuff. We're going with something else now. One question needs to be answered, and I'm already pretty sure that I know the answer, but there are people that do ask the question. You're putting this 20-some odd miles offshore. There's a thing called a hurricane that comes by on a regular basis.
Oh, yeah.
And what's the survivability of these things in a hurricane?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure you've built them so they would survive, but they need to hear that.
Yeah. Do you want to take that one, Catherine? Do you want me to do it?
Go for it.
Okay, so I would say that industry standard for offshore wind is to survive about a 3 or 4 category hurricane. Of course, as I think Catherine would share, infrastructure like offshore wind is an insurable risk, and there are going to be repairs that have to be made, but that's also what those workers are for and all those jobs that are going to be produced. But it's also worth noting that there are a lot of different technologies that are being developed to make sure that offshore wind turbines are as storm resilient as possible. So right now, again, industry standard is that they'll cut off at about 60 miles an hour automatically, and then the blades will feather into the wind, so there's as little surface area into the wind, so they won't be, you're not going to see a wind turbine blade washed up on the beach after a hurricane. But they are coming up with more advanced technologies, and Jennifer Munt, who's the assistant Secretary for Clean Energy Economic Development, was talking about this the other day, and I wish I remember the statistic that she brought up. But she was talking about how the technology that they're using to make sure that they can actually keep spinning during a hurricane and producing more power and withstand a little bit of higher wind speeds. But they've got them in the North Sea and they've got them in
So
Europe.
you're saying at a Cat 3 or maybe a 4, there would be some damage like any place,
Yeah.
but it's not going to destroy the farm.
Oh, no. They're fully prepared
No,
for
and
that.
that's a direct hit from a category 3 or 4.
Yep.
I mean, that is with a turbine being in the eye, passing near the eye wall.
Yeah. Does that answer your
People need to
question?
hear that.
Yes,
because that is a
absolutely.
concern.
No,
yeah, I mean,
for sure.
and my quip is always, we're willing to build homes in the path of a category, name it, hurricane. Those homes need electricity. You've got to build, you've got to build generating technologies. I mean, we've got a nuclear plant that is on the coast.
Exactly.
We've got, we've had coal plants that are on the coast. It's a generating technology. If we choose to have homes that require electricity and businesses that require electricity, we've got to generate it in proximity to those needs.
And we suffer the consequences if we build in an area that hurricanes occur.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you build there, because if you know they do, then you have to deal with it.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Bill?
It certainly does, and also explains why I have a generator at my house.
Yep.
Good call. Good call.
What
Batteries.
other questions can we answer for you?
One thing, you stopped me when you said the winds shut down at 60 miles an hour.
60.
60. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
That's my Yankee coming out with 60. So my thought would be at 60 miles an hour, they stop doing what they're supposed to be doing, but most likely, but anything else going on is stopped doing it anyway, too.
Right.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of plants that are going to be functioning at that
Yeah.
number either.
Exactly.
All right, so, and you're now also telling me that at some point down the road, you expect to be able to survive even beyond that?
Yes.
How far away is that?
That is a great question. This was actually relatively new information to me that I learned last week about the fact that they're trying to extend beyond that category 3, category 4, cutoff. So I can dig into that a little bit and get back to you. But yeah, that was relatively new information to me.
Wow, that's awesome.
And in the Gulf, I mentioned earlier, we work in the Gulf of Mexico, and there are companies there that are working on specifically, it's almost in the opposite direction. They've got fairly low wind speeds in the Gulf, like steady wind speeds. They don't have nearly the same kind of standard wind that North Carolina does. So they're trying to develop turbines and blades that both withstand hurricane force winds, but actually it's called cut in. They start producing electricity at even lower wind speeds. So, I mean, like anything, right? We've got a lot of technology
Now, I hate
advancement.
to admit this, by the way, but I'm becoming a fan of offshore.
See?
Oh.
Now, I hate
love
to
you
admit
guys.
this.
Bill, is that
TK,
is that
you
on
losing
camera?
it over there?
It's been like a year.
Yeah, it has.
Well, no, I wasn't here for the other three, to be
no,
fair.
he wasn't here for the show.
I missed.
But any time that you went north, all we heard was windmills.
I know.
Well, yeah, but
'Cause they were on
let me
land.
explain this part to it. I've saw the land-based operation. I've seen them hooked up to generators to make them work, so they could develop. I've seen the pictures of the birds that get killed. I've seen all that good stuff. But I've also argued the fact that if you couldn't get a constant wind source, it didn't make a lot of sense for any up. Offshore provides that consistent, almost 24-hour wind source, so it makes sense.
It also
You could take it to D.C. There's a lot of wind coming out of Washington. I agree.
It also not only are the winds steady, but they are actually, again, I love my diversification argument. In case you can't tell, the winds offshore pick up summer afternoons. So as we get more solar on the grid, when do you need additional electricity? As the sun goes down. And again, it's all about that balance. If offshore wind starts picking up, same winter mornings, we hear now about North Carolina used to be a summer peaking state, meaning that our greatest electricity need was in the summertime, summer afternoons when we crank our AC. We are moving toward a winter peaking state, especially as folks install things like heat pumps or, other technologies that use electricity to heat our homes instead of gas. And so offshore wind is very strong in winter mornings. That is going to be the new peak. So
I think, what won me over with you guys was not only the technology made sense, but you also used that diversification, okay? Because I'm a big fan of no one thing is going to work, especially straight through. And you're the only person that I've heard talk that came from alternative energy. Everybody else talks about it's going to be wind power, it's going to be solar power. Look, I took a trip to I was in Hawaii, and I asked this one person because one of the islands was doing a lot of solar
solar.
powers, and I said to him, "What would it take solar power to power this island?" And the man explained to me they would have to take down every building and put solar power every square foot of the island to generate enough electricity to power the island. And that's what bothered me. Okay? But you're at least saying something that makes sense to me. And you've actually may have gotten a convert out of this operation.
I pride myself on being a reasonable person.
And you are.
Well, and again, we're not here to change
Absolutely.
anybody's minds. We just
am.
want to.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, I'm not here to change anybody's minds. I really just want to make sure that we're here to answer your questions.
You didn't think it was possible, did you?
We need to hear once again what's going on tonight.
Yes, absolutely. So this evening from 4 to 7 p.m. at Brunswick County Community College, the North Carolina Task Force for Offshore Wind Economic Resource Strategy is hosting, can you say that 5 times fast? Because I can't. They're
I
hosting,
know say it
you
one
can.
time. Slow.
They're hosting an open house, and we're going to have a number of subject matter experts from military, Coast Guard, environment and wildlife, fisheries, economic development. We'll have offshore wind developers there for the Carolina Long Bay project to answer all your questions and also figure out what questions we need answers to still as well. So we'll have an option or an opportunity to get feedback and take that back with us and figure out what questions we still need to answer. And then we'll also have presentations at 4:30, 5:30, and 6:30, just brief informational sessions.
Now, is this at Odell Williamson Hall?
it's at the auditorium.
The auditorium. Okay, just
I
so
believe it's the
people know.
Virginia, the auditorium, the big auditorium.
It's Odell
it's
Williams.
Okay. No, I don't know why I was thinking Virginia.
It's the
That's
auditorium.
okay.
Yeah, the auditorium.
It's the big room.
I'm just following her.
Just
And
so
I'm going to make a commercial here for BCC with this, because I'm a big fan of BCC. If you don't know it, it's been the #1 community college 2 years in a row now nationwide.
Nice.
They have done some
We're so
unique
proud.
programs there. They're ahead of the curve. What's also nice about BCC, thanks to the county, it's free.
Oh,
Amazing.
If you are a Brunswick County resident, you go absolutely free.
that's very
If
cool.
you're even homeschool, you go absolutely free.
Yep.
And they have actually worked out, our county commissioners have gone to the point where there are a half a dozen four-year schools, including UNC, Pembroke, and someplace else, that will accept you for your last 2 years at $500 a semester.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
I
phenomenal.
might go get a second degree.
So it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, $500 a semester. I paid more than that when I went to college in the dark ages.
And we do have
Mary was my teacher.
students. Be quiet. We do have students that are going to the coast, which is right down the street, who will graduate with their associates.
That's awesome.
It's a 5-year program.
I mean, I just think it
amazing.
is wonderful. Just wonderful.
So that was a commercial for BCC here, and they didn't even pay for that one. That was a freebie.
Yeah.
They owe us
Well,
money.
they are hosting.
Yeah.
You know, they are hosting a great community event
They are hosting a community event.
this
We'll give them
evening.
that
So
one.
Yes. Yep. They're
Anyway,
awesome.
I think we're at the point where we got to pay our bills again,
Okay.
and then we'll wrap it up, and I think we're done.
What a great place we all call home. From colorful sunsets to panoramic coastal views. The best attractions are its people, a community of friends and family. J.K. Summers, attorney at law, recognizes this fact and is proud of his work to protect their rights. Put your trust in him to prepare wills and trusts, real estate transactions, contract and LLC creations, and criminal, traffic, and civil matters. Visit oakislandlaw.com or call 910-253-5572. J.K. Summers, attorney at law.
Was your home damaged by Hurricane Florence or Matthew? Repair, reconstruct, or elevate your home with help from Rebuild NC. Find out if you are eligible for assistance by calling 833-ASK-RBNC. That's 833-275-7262. Or apply now at rebuild.nc.gov/repair.
It seems like every other store is now selling CBD in some form or another. But did you know that Wilmington has just one local CBD company? I'm talking about Carolina Pure. Family owned and operated, they are Wilmington's first and only CBD company that makes quality hemp products right here in town, including tinctures, topicals, and pet products. Their hemp is sourced from local farmers and they support area musicians and nonprofits. Check us out at carolinapureshop.com.
Veteran Awareness sponsored by You Are Not Alone. Today's veteran homeless rate is approximately 19,750, and the numbers are declining because of the various veteran programs. If you or a veteran you know is homeless, please call 877-4AID-VET. This is a confidential and toll-free call. From this veteran to other veterans, please be there to help our brother and sister veterans. Again, the number is 1-877-424-3838. And thank you for your service.
This show is also sponsored by Dr. Tony Maglione. Dr. Tony is a cardiologist practicing in Wilmington. He accepts Medicare patients, and his office is located across the street from New Hanover Regional Medical Center at 2032 17th Street. The office number is 202-1071. Dr. Tony is an author whose last book is Rules for Conservative Patriots, and it can be purchased on Amazon. His website is www.drtonymag.com. Well, everybody, believe it or not, our time is up. We've had a great show. We've learned a lot of things. We've even possibly made a convert today. But Mary's going to say what's going on next week, and then we'll say goodnight.
Next week, I am happy to announce that we will have with us Captain Tim Daniels from the State Highway Patrol.
So
He'll
bring your
come on.
tickets you want fixed. Bring them in. We'll take care of it.
No. He'll be joining us to let us know the changes with the laws in that category. And I just want to thank Catherine, Carly, and Ethan very, very much for coming tonight. Awesome show,
It was a great show. Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Yes.
having
Thanks
us.
for having us.
Thank
And anyway,
you.
we'll
Always a
see you
pleasure.
next week on All Things Brunswick.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
You too.